Before I get started, I want to just make a couple references to where I got some of my material from. I think that's only fair. Of course, the scriptures, without question. But also Nadia Bolz-Weber, House of All Sinners and Saints. I listen to her quite frequently. Andy Stanley, Your Move. A book called Chop Wood and Carry Water. I would recommend that book to anyone. Chop Wood, Carry Water. Mr. Hansen from school got me turned on to that, and actually he's going to be using that in his leadership class this year, and I'm really excited. And last but not least, and I forgot it up there, The Road to Character. Would you hand that for me? Which I don't need it till the end, but you can bring it up now. So, victim or, well, I'm not going to start there. Thank you. My hope for you today is this, that I would say something that would like pound you right between the eyes, right? Because we have words all around us, don't we? I have thousands of books at home, I really do. And they say the average woman, I think, don't quote me on this, talks between 15 and 20,000 words a day. And men somewhere between 5 and 8. Because there's no place for them to talk, because the women aren't talking. So there's words all around us. But all of us have had that moment, haven't we? When something hit us right between the eyes, and it changed the trajectory of our lives forever. I've had 2 or 3 of those. And the first one I had is I was traveling down the road. I was on US 2, east of Gold City, and I was listening to Dr. Laura Schlesinger. And Dr. Laura said this, victim or victorious, you choose. And I know that God had prepared my heart because right then and there, in that vehicle, I thought, sick or well, married or unmarried, poor or rich, I was choosing victorious. Now, she went on a little bit farther and she said this, you can't be victorious in some situations and a victim in others, right? You can't go, I'm going to be victorious until noon and then I'm going to be a victim. Because victorious isn't a prize. It's not a reward. Victorious is not a behavior. It's an attitude. Now, I had the opportunity to live that out the very next week in almost the very same spot when the police officer pulled me over. All right? And when he started coming up to my car, I began playing the victim. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell him that I'm a single mother and I just was divorced and I have 4 kids that just got home from school and I really did. And he got up to the car and he said, do you know what, you're speeding tonight? And I took responsibility and got the $115 ticket, okay? But I was victorious. Why was I victorious? Because I chose to be responsible, like Gary, for my actions and did not use what was going on in my life as an excuse. That changed the trajectory of my life. Okay, so I hope something I say today will. I went to the scripture and this is what I found. First of all, in Mark, Jesus and his companions now arrived at the town of Capernaum, and on Saturday morning went into the church where he preached. So Jesus was kind of like a guest speaker. Suddenly Jesus was interrupted by a man who had an unclean spirit. Now some of the versions say a demon, but when I see the word demon, my eyes kind of glaze over and you lose me, because that's not normal in my life. And so when I think of demon, I think of Halloween 5 or one of those crazy horror movies, all right? But unclean spirit, I can get. But it doesn't say what unclean spirit. Was it a spirit of addiction? Was it a spirit of anger? Was it a spirit of domestic violence? Was it a spirit of lust? But whatever it was, Jesus recognized it as an unclean spirit. And Jesus commanded the unclean spirit to come out of him. And now we all know what happens then. Then the man kind of convulses and yells, and the spirit goes out of him. And I think that all of us believe that the yelling and the convulsing was because the unclean spirit was hanging on so tight to the man. But I propose to you that maybe it was the man hanging on so tight to the unclean spirit. Because let's face it, those unclean spirits, those spirits of addiction and victimhood, there's payoff in them, right? If I'm a victim, I don't have to be responsible for anything. If I'm addicted, I don't have to deal with my emotions. Then I went on to John and found this scripture. Inside the city, the pool was with covered platforms and porches surrounded it. Crowds of sick people, lame, blind, or paralyzed limbs lay on the platform, waiting for a certain movement of the water. For an angel of the Lord came every so often and disturbed the water, and the first person to step down into it afterwards was healed. One of the men laying there had been there for 38 years. 38 years, think about that. When Jesus saw him and knew how long he had been ill, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" Listen to what the man says. "I can't," the sick man said, "for I have no one to help me into the pool at the moment of the water. And when I'm trying to get there, someone always beats me there." Think about it. Jesus asked him, "Do you want to get well?" And the man made excuses. Don't we do that? It's interesting because I was reading this passage to my husband yesterday when we were having lunch, and we were marveling how you hear a passage over and over again, and then it just comes to life to you like this one did for me. And he looked at me very seriously, and he said, "Deb, do you want to get well?" Because there is a part of me that he knows about that is not well. And I very honestly said, no. And then I said, you know what? I take that back. Yes, I do. But at this point in my life, I am not willing to put the work in or the pain that it's going to take to make me well. And we talked about the ramifications of some of that, the possible ramifications. It's not pretty. But at this point, I'm okay with that victimhood. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just being very authentic and honest. See, I think all of us, including myself, who said, I choose victorious, there are some places in our heart that we have kept hidden, that we have kept locked. And we've done so because somebody has hurt us or shamed us or violated us or embarrassed us and created in us a victim. So as I'm talking today, I want you to think about those hidden places in your heart where we remain the victim and apply the words to help you unlock that area in your life. So number one, victims have a to-do list, and victors have a to-be list. Did you ever notice that people that are hugely successful are usually hugely unhappy? Think about Tiger Woods. That's the first person that came to my mind. He rocked the to-do list, didn't he? He did everything right. He gave up everything. He sacrificed. He worked harder than anybody, and he's at the pinnacle of success. The world is applauding him, and he's there wondering, he's been duped. I'm sure he feels cheated because he's not very happy, is he? And when we feel duped and we feel cheated, we feel like the victim. I remember another story from Ravi Zachariah, who talked about a Dallas Cowboy football player who the night of the Super Bowl champion, and he was the champion, he rode home, ordered his brand new Lamborghini, had his big fancy Super Bowl ring on, went up to his bedroom that overlooked the city of Dallas with a wall full of glass. And he said it was the first time in his life that he thought about taking his life, because he had reached the pinnacle of success and found out there's nothing there. And he had been duped, and he felt like a victim. The world was applauding, very definitely, because the scorecard that the world uses to judge us by is tragically flawed, and pursuing it will leave you completely unfulfilled. Listen to this. Like thirsty people guzzling salt water, achievement only creates a greater desire to accomplish more dehydrating us of true satisfaction and fulfillment. So I propose to you that victors have a to-do list, or a to-be list, okay? Find somebody that you admire. Write down 3 or 4 of the qualities that they have that you admire. Put it on a 3x5 card. Carry it with you. Twice a day, take it out. See how you're doing. You can conquer all those to-be lists, and I'm telling you, you're not going to feel duped, and you're not going to feel like a victim. You're going to be powerful and a wonderful witness for Christ. So victims have a to-do list, and victors have a to-be list. Number 2, victims focus on their feelings, and victors focus on their principles. If all of you have your notes, you see that cute little picture. On the left of that picture is my son Drake when he was his first day of kindergarten. And on the right is Abby Germain, his little neighbor friend. Now, his grandma posted this picture the other day, and my son David called me. For those of you who know, Drake has Crohn's and has struggled with it tremendously over the last couple years. And I won't go into all the details, but just tremendous struggle with it. It seems to pop up quite a bit. David called me, who's one of my other sons, and said, "Mom, I saw this picture posted on Facebook." He said, and I looked at that wonderful, innocent little boy with all the promise that he had to offer, and I started to cry when I thought of all the things that he goes through every day. See, David was focused on his feelings. And that's okay, but I can't. Because if I focused on my feelings, I would be bitter. I would be jealous. I would be angry. And I would be sad. So instead, I focus on my principle, and I live by this principle. Pain creates strength, and strength creates power. So when he can't run in his cross-country meet because he is in a flare-up, I can know that he is building strength and a power that God will use someday for his glory. Victims focus on feelings, and victors focus on principle. Another story, a friend of mine who has a wife who's very ill and won't be getting any better. And I was talking to him in the parking lot of D&D. And I asked him how he was doing, and he told me this story, and it brought tears. I cried right in the parking lot. He said he was talking to a friend of his, and his friend, he was kind of sharing the frustration and the struggles that he was having with his wife. And his friend listened very intently, you know, gave him some pats on the back and encouragement, and then hung up. A few hours later, he called him back, and he said this, "Dick," I should have said that name, "Dick, I want you to know something. For 50 years, she took care of you, and now it's your turn." Now that story is beautiful on so many levels, but he said, you know what? That got my place back in order, and I began to focus on the principle, that principle of she took care of you for 50 years, and now it's your turn, than my feelings. Victims focus on their feelings, and victors focus on principle. Number 3, victims focus on the outcome, and victors focus on the process. Do you know, I'm the guidance counselor at school. And do you know, up till about 10 years ago, being a valedictorian or a salutatorian was a heck of an honor, right? And colleges would reward that honor by wanting you at their school and providing you money to have you at that school. That's changed. That has changed. 2 years ago, I think Newberry had 9 valedictorians. Okay? I'm going to tell you why it's changed. Because people have begun focusing on the outcome. They want the prize. They want the reward. So it got dumbed down. So kids choose and manipulate the system to figure out a way to get the higher GPA. And what happens is the schools years ago that gave the monies because they wanted that child at their school, they didn't want them there because they were the Val. They wanted them there because of the journey it took to become the valedictorian. And that journey has gone away. And all it is a title anymore. Because we, as parents and as kids, are focusing on the outcome instead of the process. And it is in the process that is where is the power. It's not in the title. Another story, and I know I shared this the last time, but it was such a eye-opening thing to me. I'm the Key Club advisor. And the first thing the Key Club wanted to do last year when we got together was to have a community tree lighting ceremony. And I thought it was a stupid idea. I didn't like it at all. But I kept my mouth shut because it's student-led, right? It's not Debbie-led, it's student-led. Kept my mouth shut. But I worried about this, and I got nervous about it, and I had a pit in my stomach about it because I was so focused on the outcome. I was so focused on the outcome that I could not enjoy the process. And as that night came together, and the outcome, was it perfect? No. Was it smooth? No. Was it wonderful? Yes. In a very organic sort of way. See, no one there cared about the outcome. What they cared about was the process, that there were 15 high school kids that cared enough about their community that they wanted to do something special. So victims focus on the outcome, and victors focus on the process. And the power is in the process. Number 4, victors compare and victors compare and victors improve. Ernest Hemingway says this: there is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. Let's face it, typically if we're really that much better than somebody at something, it was a gift from God in the first place. And how can we possibly feel superior to someone when it was a gift to start with? Number 5, victims try to fix an inside problem with an outside solution. 2 weeks this summer, we rented a beautiful beach house several hours away. And for the first week, I was there by myself. And I really wanted to take the time and do some examination and some healing. And the interesting thing that I found is that my baggage went with me. My baggage went with me. I didn't get to leave it at home, right? Because we fool ourselves. We think that, once I get married, I'll deal with that lust problem will be gone. Or once I quit school, then I'll have time for my family. Or, all of those things, we fool ourselves. We start believing that if we have a new do or a new view, there's a new you. And it doesn't work that way. Because wherever I go, guess what? There I am, baggage and all. We need to know that victors fix an inside problem with inside work. They know it's an inside job. And it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what job you change. It doesn't matter if you get your hair done. It does not matter. You're still the same, and it's an inside job. And oftentimes, we use our external things to make excuses and become the victim because our job isn't nice, or our husband isn't nice, or our kids aren't nice. Those are all excuses. You choose victim or victorious. Number 6, victims are proud. Victors are humble. I share this with Drake all the time. If you're really good at something, You don't have to tell anybody because they already know it. And if they're not talking about it, they don't really want to talk about how good you are. It's as easy as that, right? Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Joyce Meyer says that we walk around all day, and I believe this wholeheartedly. What about me? 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 Okay? Let's change that. Let's change that. What about you? What about you? What about you? You don't have to think less of yourself. Just think about yourself less. And the last one. Victims have self-confidence, and victors have self-respect. Self-confidence, we think that's a great thing, don't we? And it is, to a certain extent. But self-confidence ebbs and flows based on performance, based on how somebody reacts to you, based on feedback that you get, based on a test score. Self-confidence ebbs and flows. Self-respect, steady and solid. I think about the Engadine Eagle football team, who a couple weeks ago, shocked all of us and had a wonderful victory, And if they based that victory on self-confidence, last Thursday night, that'd have been tough, right? But if they'd chosen self-respect, and I'm going to read what David Brooks from The Road to Character says about self-respect, they would have maintained solid and steady. Solid and steady. Self-respect is not the same as self-confidence or self-esteem. Self-respect is not based on IQ or any of the mental or physical gifts that help you through life. It is not comparable. It is not earned by being better than other people at something. It is earned by being better than you used to be. It is by being dependable in times of testing, straight in times of temptation. It emerges in one who is morally dependable. Self-respect is produced by inner triumphs. And isn't that the truth? Those are the biggest battles that we'll fight, is those silent inner battles that no one talks about. And most of us don't want to talk about them. But I think we need to, because we're all fighting them. Self-respect is produced by inner triumphs, not external ones. It can only be earned by a person who has endured some internal temptation, who has confronted their own weaknesses head on, and who knows that whatever comes, I'll be okay. So when I think of the Engadine football team, I'd much rather have them have self-respect. That whatever comes, victory, defeat, they're going to be solid and steady. Instead of basing their lives and their season on self-confidence based on performance and other teams' abilities. So, today, your failures, your shortcomings, your challenges, they can either end up as your excuses, like that day when I was sitting there when that police officer was coming, and I wanted to give every excuse that I had for breaking the law, or they can become your story. So victim or victorious, you choose.